Welcome back. Longer life expectancies in America having a direct impact on investing and long-term saving, driving what some are calling the great wealth transfer. More than $124 trillion in assets is set to transition to the next generation in the coming years. Roughly $40 trillion of that money expected to go to women. Joining me now to walk through it is Abacus Global Management's Chairman and CEO, Jay Jackson. Jay, great to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
And you know, your assets under management and your research around that speaks exactly to this. And that's why we wanted to have you on to talk about the relation of living longer and managing your money around that. Your research into the future of asset allocation. Tell us what you've seen, what you've found in terms of life expectancy, and how that has triggered changes in terms of long-term money management.
It's going to change how long-term money management is done, not just today, but way into the future. I mean, there's a $124 trillion wealth transfer that's coming. Think about the impact to the markets that's going to have. But most importantly, time is on your side here. I think the mistake that a lot of people make is when they consider how they're going to allocate in retirement, the number one fear is running out of money. And that's a fair fear because for the most part, people are living longer here in the United States, and how are they going to address that? The problem is, two 65-year-olds go in to see their financial advisor. They get the same plan because they don't understand the underlying data. What Abacus does really well is that we're an AI-enabled program. We've aggregated this data over the last 20 years, millions of pages of medical records that we can now transcribe, review, and have better prediction outcomes for people to better understand how long they're going to be in retirement. That's going to impact significantly how they allocate. Time is on your side. I want to make sure all of your listeners understand this. Warren Buffett accumulated 98% of his wealth past the age of 65. And that wasn't because he was...
That's incredible.
It's incredible, right? It wasn't because he was conservative. It was because he remained invested in equities. He remained invested. He's a capitalist. We need to think about the same thing and the same way of investing when we're 65. Those last doubles really have an impact. You should double your income in some cases. You can leave 20 to 30% more to your heirs in some cases just by having the right asset allocation, not going conservative too early.
So in terms of this wealth transfer, $124 trillion, how does that happen? How will that take place? And you're saying that baby boomers and older generations are dying off and they're just leaving that money to their children?
That's what's coming. And what's really amazing about this is that we highlighted $40 trillion is going to go ultimately to women in this. And women are healthier, they're living longer, they have more time on their side. It's important to think about when you think about basic investing, if you average 10% a year for 7 years, that's a double of your money. Well, in some cases, you're adding two doubles to your wealth over a time period of, let's say, 25 to 30 years. This wealth transfer, if you're allocated into equities versus just solely fixed income, consider the impact of the Dow, the S&P over the next decade. The issue that's out there today is that most companies, most firms, and most people don't understand when this is going to occur. Where Abacus sits, this is a new category in how people will evaluate their investments. No longer picking the hottest fund. It's now going to be, how do I allocate based upon how much time I have?
And Abacus is launching a new lifespan-based financial planning AI tool.
That's
you
right.
did so in June, called LifeArc.
Right.
Tell us about this model. It's personalized to clients and powered by years of the data you've put together, because you say knowing your lifespan or how long you will be in retirement is the most important factor in determining your asset allocation.
It's number one and should be number one. And what's amazing is we think about lifespan as a direct line. What we say is that it's an arc of probabilities, which you can have an impact on even later in life. And the most important factor is how long you're going to be there. An example is if you're 78 years old, you have a few $1 million in retirement, many times you're not drawing enough off of that retirement. What we find is if you continue to remain allocated to equities and alternatives, don't go conservative too early. Ultimately, what happens is you double your income, and you can have 20 to 30% more to leave to your heirs just on historical returns. This isn't the fund of the day. This is the way you should be allocating. And most importantly, is that now you have a better understanding to communicate this to your heirs. Is this 8-year program, 10-year program? It changes the way that you think about estate planning.
This is so important, especially since Social Security is drying up. We've talked about that. Now, you released your company forecast for 2026 and 2028 growth, projecting earnings growth at over 24% this year, 85% for 2028. Is this also modeling in these expectations of how people will invest around their lifespan?
It's starting to. And what we're seeing in these forecasts is that Abacus as a business, as an AI-enabled company, has harnessed this data, and now we're producing this data. It's a whole new category that in the investment space, people just aren't getting their heads around yet, but it's going to have a massive impact on how we allocate and how anyone thinks about this wealth transfer that's coming. I mean, how many markets do you look at and say, hey, I have an addressable market of 124 trillion? What we say is it should be 155 trillion because of how we allocate. If we're allocating appropriately in retirement, you're going to have better outcomes.
And you went to the source, you went to funeral homes, hospitals, counties to verify every mortality that happens in the U.S. within 48 hours at a nearby 100% accuracy. That's incredible. And you shared with me one stat that people don't understand, which is when you're very tall, you probably won't live as long as someone who's shorter.
Yeah, well, I'm 6'5", and we're still trying to find someone 6'5" and taller over the age of 95. But that's where most financial plans ultimately land. Dick Van Dyke was one of the first centurions ever to be over 6 foot tall. And so height does play into this. There's a number of reasons why biologically that actually occurs. But if we can go back a second, think about what we talked about on tracking mortality. Secretary Bessent was on your show just 2 weeks ago. I encourage and ask Secretary Bessent and their staff to reach out to us because we do track every mortality that happens in the United States to better enhance our data. We can use that data. He had a $500 billion target to stop making payments to people who had deceased.
Right.
We have the data. We could accomplish that for him in days and weeks and months versus months and years as they're trying to target. We already do this for pension funds across the United States. We have harnessed AI to help us get better solutions and do this in a much quicker way. And Secretary Bessent, if you happen to be watching, please reach out.
That is awesome. Jay, great to have you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good info here from Jay Jackson.